record?
No, we record all of our calls at Docebo, so it's common practice for me.
Um, Perfect. So why don't we just do this? Anthony, you and I know each other. How about I could ask you to do a little introduction of yourself and your role to Stephen, and then I'll get Stephen to do the same back. Both Stephen and I are actually, as we talk, familiar with Docebo. We both have spent quite a bit of time in the learning industry in kind of like years gone by. We're both much older than you are, and so this is kind of like from a while back. So we're familiar with Docebo, but it'll just be great to for you to explain the company in your words and what you're doing there and your role, and just how the role is developing and how the function there is developing, and then Stephen can give some background, and then the time is yours to use in whichever way will be best for you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I can go ahead. I'll start with an introduction. So, I have been at Docebo for coming up on a year and a half now. So, started at the end of 2023. First and still the only value engineering specialist at Docebo. It started with I guess a couple of years ago, our new now chief revenue officer who had come from places like Oracle and SAP, who had value functions, wanting to bring that to Docebo. And so the initiative sort of started with myself, and we had a couple external consultants as well work with us to really build up the first set of value models that we had built, which was back end of 2023, start of 2024. And my primary role last year was to continue to build out those value models for all of our use cases. We have our use cases online. I think there's about 8 of them. And so the mission was to build the value models to align with those use cases as we present them to customers. So last year it was mainly focused on that, and the value process, I guess, was very focused on pre-sales and still kind of is. I'll get on calls directly with prospects and pull metrics from them, try to get information about current state, and then make predictions about what the impact we might be able to see with them is. The big push for this year that we're kind of just starting now is to move into post-sales and speak directly with actual customers to build these things out, and kind of twofold. One, selfishly collect the data for ourselves, and then feed that back into pre-sales. Two is just to build better relationships with our customers. And hopefully if we're able to actually speak to impact, which we currently don't do at all, there's things like less chance of churning, higher chance of expansion at renewal date and things like that. So that's kind of where we're at now. I'm just starting to put the outline together of doing those actual post-sales customer workshops. And so this is a time when I'm really thinking, since it's still just me, about scalability, because I'm still doing the pre-sales interviews. I'm now going to be doing post-sales as well. We have a lot of demand from our sellers for value engineering work on pre-sales still. And so trying to think about how I can scale this to go along with that demand.
That's super interesting. It's a great journey to be on. Have helped a number of companies along that journey. Can I just give a quick background on myself?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I come out of the tech space, of the building, scaling, and a couple of lucky instances exiting technology companies.
Okay.
And so I'd done that a number of times, and that's actually where Amar and I met, because one of the things that I did is I actually built the SCORM software. Do you know?
Yeah, we use SCORM.
Yeah. I think everybody does. It's boring plumbing now, but once upon a time it was more interesting. But I also organized a conference back in the day to get people talking about their APIs, so that one could get the APIs of all of the different parts of the learning ecosystem to work together. And so, because there were a lot of claims being made by marketing that were not necessarily substantiable by, when you actually had to glue this stuff together in the real world. So I did that for a while. And that's, I think I met Amar actually even before that.
We did, yeah.
But back in a different century, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But then I exited that company, and I was taking some time off, and I was brought into a company called Monitor Group, which was a medium-sized 4,000 person consulting company based in Cambridge, Mass. And I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts. My job was to look at all the different things that Monitor did, and figure out what, if anything, should be taken online and delivered as software rather than consulting.
Mm.
So I looked at lots of different things, but the thing that got me really excited, much to my surprise, was value and pricing. Monitor had purchased a company called Pricing Strategy Group. Anyway, it was Tom Nagel's company. And I'm not sure if you know Tom, but Tom is the person who invented economic value estimation and value models.
Okay.
And wrote a great book called The Strategy and Tactics of Pricing. And Tom and his team got me deeply engaged and excited about this stuff, much to my surprise. If you told me before that I would end up being really interested in how to understand and communicate value, I would have said you're smoking too much of the local product. But as you know, right, once you get into this stuff, it's absolutely compelling and exciting. So as part of that, we built a company called Leverage Point, which we spun out of Monitor and stood up as an independent company. And then I decided to move back to Vancouver and leave Leverage Point in good hands. Leverage Point is doing well, but it's mostly focused on industrial companies.
Okay.
So they have a pretty good customer base among people like BASF and Caterpillar and guys like that. What Amar and I realized after a somewhat circuitous route is that there was a real need for B2B SaaS companies to adopt value-based sales and value-based customer success and value-based pricing. And we've built Ibbaka to deliver on that. So we're completely focused on B2B SaaS and adjacent areas like agentic AI and business AI. And that's how and who we're building Ibbaka for. So we've developed a platform and a set of artificial intelligence agents that allow you to generate value models and then take those generated value models and use them to instantiate them for specific customers, which I find pretty exciting. And we are we're extending that and as you know, working at Docebo, that agents are going to be quite a transformative thing. I've read some things that your CEO was writing about agents earlier today on LinkedIn. Ibbaka is partnered with Maxio. I don't know if you know Maxio, but they are a billing management system.
Okay.
And we are currently doing research on how you create value with agents, how you package agents, and how you're going to price and manage the billing. So we're in the midst of that research, which will get published in April. But it's, the world is shifting. And I think, Docebo, I was pretty excited by the stuff I read this morning, actually, because, understanding how agents are going to work in the learning world is a really compelling opportunity. And I haven't heard or seen Cornerstone or any of those other companies, acting in that area. But anyway, that's a little bit about me.
And so what we did, Stephen, as you know, is we had a conversation, Anthony, Ben, and I, probably 6 weeks ago, a couple of months ago, and we did do two things. We were just getting ready to drop the learning category value map document. We shared that with Anthony and Ben, but we also did generate a preliminary public information, of course, based value model for Docebo. Sent that over to Ben and Anthony, and this was a conversation to first look at that value model, and then to talk about what would happen next if we were to work together. Yeah. So two things then, Anthony. Would love your feedback. I know you gave some preliminary feedback on the learning category value map that we did.
Yeah.
But would love some feedback on that, and or on the the preliminary value model we did for Docebo. I'm going to let you answer that question. I'm going to be right back. There's somebody just knocking on the front door though.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, but yeah.
No, appreciate the interest, Stephen. Super interesting stuff. And yeah, actually, speaking of, as far as I know, the only other player in our space right now that's really focusing on AI and agents and stuff is Sana Labs. They are, yeah, they're getting more and more into the space that we're in. So we're thinking about those things too. And we just had this morning, I don't know exactly how much I can share, but part of it was, some new initiatives we're thinking about and how we want to frame some of our projects this year. And one of them that I'm thinking about is embedding sort of AI-driven tools and processes to scale our group's impact and efficiency. So that's one thing that we're thinking about, and I actually think that having that happen this morning is perfect timing for this conversation, actually.
Yeah.
In terms of, I have the value model here. So I skimmed through the value model initially when you had sent it. Apologies, it took me a few weeks there to get through it, but it actually looks so. What I have internally, as I mentioned, is built out for our use cases at Docebo based on, like, we have a value model for employee onboarding and talent development. We have a model for customer education, frontline training, compliance training. Some of them get used far more than others. And one thing that I've been thinking about recently is building some sort of tool so that people and sellers can do these things without me using this big Excel spreadsheet that I've been using, and it's very wieldy and there's a bunch of sheets and everything going on. But a lot of the things that you've highlighted here are things that I have in my own model. Some of the formulas are mostly the same, some are a little bit different, but like for the most part, what you guys have captured is a lot of what I've actually built. Especially looking at things when we're thinking about our onboarding and talent development use case. Things like accelerated onboarding is a big one. We look at that from a cost savings perspective, and I think the calculation you have here is from a revenue perspective. So that's the other perspective.
Right.
Faster, you get them up and running faster, they bring in more revenue, and then the cost savings is the other side of that. If they have a dollar value it takes to onboard somebody new. And then another big one is improved employee retention, which you also have here. And then we actually have the calculation on that one looks almost the exact same, actually. So overall, some of the things that we don't actually capture that you did show here, things like I'm just looking flexibility and optionality, like integration projects, buying new software in the future that is now avoided because of purchasing Docebo. We talk to those things. We don't always put a number to them just because we find it difficult sometimes to get people to share some of that information or think about, like, okay, if you have Docebo, you don't need to do all these things in the future. Some of them are not comfortable having those conversations, but I do like that they're included here. So I don't know necessarily that I have any specific questions. I mean, a lot of it makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
I guess my big, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, Anthony, please finish your thought.
I was just gonna say my big thing coming into this meeting is really wondering what would the process be moving forward from here, because I think in terms of, I am in a position right now where I'm trying to think about scalability.
Mhm.
This seems like a really good way to do that. It seems like you guys understand the learning space from what I can tell. So yeah, just looking to see what would steps be moving forward.
Okay. What I'm let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, and obviously it's a demo environment. It's not a learning company. It's a security company. But basically that will show you how we move forward, and
Okay.
and ultimately how it manifests itself. One of our key value propositions is about scalability, and scaling, value-based selling, and then also value-based customer success across an organization. So we're going to let's show you that. Stephen, what might be useful, just while I get the environment's up, maybe what would be useful is just to talk to Anthony about the value driver taxonomy, and how we and why we have that particular taxonomy between the revenue drivers, the cost savings, the optionality, working capital, etc.
Yeah. So a little bit of background, Anthony. Okay, I'll talk about that first, but then I want to make another comment on how I think we would move forward most effectively. But we can do that after Amar shows you what we're talking about. But so the strategic pricing group, so Tom Nagel's group, built thousands of value models over the years. And one of the things that we did early on is we took those value models and we ran them through a fairly primitive AI, but an AI that we had access to at Monitor, to organize and cluster them. And we found that they fell into 6 types. So there's one set of value drivers is around growing revenue. Another is around reducing operating costs. A third is around reducing operating capital. A fourth is around reducing or deferring capital investment. A fifth, and this is one that I think is actually pretty important for Docebo, is around risk reduction. I think Docebo can have a really big impact on risk reduction in certain industries. And then the final one is optionality. Underneath that taxonomy, we actually have a second layer of value driver a second layer to that taxonomy that is much more specific to B2B SaaS. And this taxonomy is in fact one of the inputs that we use into our AI to generate value models.
Okay.
All right. So Anthony, let me just show it comes together, I think, more when I just show the platform. So let me share my screen. And as I said, I am going to be sharing with you a demo environment. So this is an instance that it represents a cybersecurity company, a B2B cybersecurity company. Think of somebody like CrowdStrike or somebody like Sentinel. We've seen them all. And so what we would do is that the value model that you saw, the preliminary value model, once we've worked with your team, we would take the final value model and we actually load it into the platform. And then a couple of interesting things happen. So let me go through the use case of a seller. So this is one of your team who is talking to a prospect. So we have a member of the sales team here that talking to the prospect. The prospect is a health system called Jacksonville Health System. So I'm going to go and have a look at this. Now, we have no limits to how many customers you can create in this platform. This would be customers of Docebo. We also don't limit by the number of users that you put into the platform. So you could put all of your sellers into the platform. We do not charge a per a per user model. We will talk about pricing in a second. You know, we've made it as easy as possible for people to do business with us. So here is the dashboard, the value dashboard for this particular customer called Jacksonville Health System. The stage that this person is in, it's still in a prospect stage, and we can manage the stages to the stages in your customer journey. And right now, as at this moment in time, what the dashboard is telling us, it's just a one-year contract, and what the dashboard is telling us that the value of the contract, the sales price of the contract, is going to be at the moment 366,000 plus change, and the price of the contract is going to be 156,000. Obviously, we support multi-year contracts. I've just created a one-year contract just to keep it nice and simple. We then have various metrics that we capture. I'll come back to you and talk to you about this one, which is the value price capture metric. And we think that's a very important metric for ensuring consistency across a growing, diverse sales team and a customer success team. All right, but let me come back. So where do these numbers come from? $366,000 of value that we, Storm Security, are estimating that we will deliver to our prospect, Jacksonville Health System. So it comes from the value model. So this here is where we instantiate for each prospect, for each customer, the overall value model for Docebo, in this case for Storm Security. And so in a situation, your seller will basically have this in front of them, and this forms the framework for them to have the discovery and the value estimation conversations with a prospect. So what we're going through here is every single part of the value model that we had shown you before, the preliminary value model, that gets broken down into, it manifests itself like this in the platform itself. We have the same taxonomy. So we have some revenue value drivers, we have the cost saving value drivers, we have risk reduction. In this particular case, we don't have the working capital optimization ones just because we don't have any there. We don't have the optionality ones, but if we did have them, they would all appear here in the view for your seller. Then each one of these, let's go through. So we have a cost savings, the taxonomy, the highest level. There's a value driver or cost savings value drivers. There is one here, and the specific one is reduce password reset costs. As we were talking about it, it might be reduce onboarding costs, or onboarding, increase onboarding time, or reduce the time it takes for someone to come to value. And then there is a set of the inputs that we need in order to calculate the value for that particular value driver underneath the cost savings value drivers. And so here is, in effect, these are the discovery questions that a seller can be saying. So you'd be saying, okay, well, Anthony, how many help desk calls are you getting? So this is a very common thing for security companies, is that they say that we can reduce the amount of time it takes you to manage all of your password reset costs, and we'll automate that process for you. And so you end up having a question that says, okay, how many such requests do you actually have a year? I'd be asking Anthony, and he'd be saying, okay, we get about 10,000 of those. And we have a value claim here where we can say, look, when we look across all of our customers, we have demonstrated that we're able to reduce those by 5%. Or it could be that this is 10%. We will pre-feed this claim into the platform, but then the seller is able to talk to the buyer about that, because the buyer might say, 10% seems a little bit high. I don't think it's going to be that high. I think it'll be more likely it'd be probably closer to 7%. So we have the basis of a claim and then a basis to have a conversation. And then
that makes sense. Is there any sort of, so when I'm doing these and I'm putting in those percentage improvements or reductions, a lot of it comes from just my experience. And a lot of the times the prospects may not have a number in mind. So they might do exactly what you said and say, oh, that seems too high. But oftentimes they won't say like, oh, we think it should be X%.
Yep.
Are there limits or some way of maybe adding like keeping the seller confined? Because I'm just worried about sellers going in there and throwing in like 30% and they don't have the experience that I have to know that that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me come back to you here. Right. So up here we have quite a bit of information about the variables that we're looking for. Okay, or each one of those claims. So we have the number that we were just looking at there in terms of the improvement claims, the reduction in password reset claims. Remember I changed it to 7% there? Is that we can populate all of this with the source information from where that claim came from. So a seller can look at each one of these claims and look at the source information that actually drives that claim.
Yeah.
But your question about upper and lower upper and lower limits is actually a good one, and I think we can force that, Stephen. I'm not sure.
Yes, we can. We've done that for eCentire.
Okay.
For exactly the reason that that Anthony just addressed.
Yep.
We can also build logic between these variables. So, for example, if I'll just take one from our world, if you know NRR, net revenue retention, and you know expansion revenue, then you can calculate churn. So if there's lots of cases I find in value models where if there's these sort of three-way relationships, and if you know any two, then you know the third. So all of that can be specified. In the case of eCentire, do you know eCentire? They're a Waterloo-based security company.
I don't think so.
Okay, anyway, roughly the same scale as Docebo, maybe a bit bigger. But what we've done for them is, in order to help their salespeople, is you just enter an industry, and it pre-populates all of the default variables for that industry. So you enter an industry, enter a use case, and it can pre-populate those variables.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that would make sense. And along the lines of, I don't know that we're actually quite at the level of sophistication to have too much differentiation between industries, but we would like to get to that point. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Right. Our AI is actually pretty good at teasing those things out.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So let's just go back. I'm going to just change this. I'm going to make it a bit more extravagant for the moment. And I'm going to say that we've actually got 30,000 users, because I want you to see that 35,000 or the 35,000 number that we have there, how that is updating in real time, and goes back and it updates the dashboard in real time as well, right? So there's as you might expect, right? So in here now, the other thing that we have is when a seller is talking to a prospect, not all of these value drivers might be relevant. So you can toggle on and off a value driver, and you can toggle on and off an entire part of the taxonomy, right? So let's imagine that with a particular prospect or a particular use case, there's no cost saving value drivers, and you can just toggle off the entire section there. So we try to make it as easy and as scalable and as intuitive for sellers to use. But this is the idea, right? So we take, in effect, the value equations that we showed you in that preliminary data model. We work with your team to say there may be more of them, and they could be specific to use cases. All of that modeling we do, and it maintains and it calculates the total value number, right? Then what we have is we have, and in this particular case, we're not proposing that we would do anything in terms of a pricing engagement with Docebo, but we would then, into our pricing model, we would model in your current price book. So we're not proposing going through a pricing exercise. That's a different conversation for a different time. And we have very deep expertise in helping software companies, B2B software companies optimize their pricing, particularly now in the world of Gen AI and agentic AI. It's an area of just like a huge amount of interest for us. But we will take your pricing model and we will put it into here. Most of our customers like us to do that, and it's, you know, it's not onerous for us to do that. And when the seller is having the value conversation with a customer, the seller is also just making sure that the pricing gets updated here as well. So you have both sides of the relationship, the value side and the price side.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. So then now, okay, that's all fair enough. But what's the next stage? The next stage is that I, the seller, am talking to my champion at a customer and to my business champion. And when I talk to my business champion, I want that person to have bought into the value story and to basically have ownership of the value number alongside me, the seller, and also for them to have awareness of the pricing so that we are in step along the way. Now, we don't think that you want to expose this level of information to your prospect. So value stories are the way that we actually communicate and our customers communicate to their prospects. And so what we will do here is that we will work with your team. We will take your current sales presentations, all of your, however your logos and your images and everything, your branding, and also how you set up when you are having a conversation with a prospect, how you want to describe Docebo, and just kind of like the normal setup. But then what we do is that these are dynamic. So the numbers that we saw in the value model automatically populate the value story. Mm-hmm. So if you remember, that was the authentication downtime number that was changed to 338. And we'll come to that in a second. So I would be, in my sales cycle, I'd be talking to my prospect, and I'd be saying, yeah, look, thanks for the information you shared with me and working with me. Let's just go through. At the moment, I'm able to demonstrate that we can bring you in year one a total value of $777,000 plus change. Let me talk this through with you. So then you go through each one of them. And you say, okay, let's go through this. The very first thing that we spoke about. Actually, let's not do this one. Let's go to the one where we were looking at before. So this was the one that we were looking at, reduce the password reset costs. So this is where you'd be having a conversation and using this value story as the place where you talk to your customer. And he said, look, when we spoke, Bob, we'd spoken about and your data and that you shared when we said there's about 30,000 resets. And Bob might say, look, you know what, I actually went back and looked at it and I think that I've overestimated it and it's actually closer to 15,000. So your seller can do all of that conversation through this value story presentation. And you can obviously download this so that your seller can send a copy through to Anthony and say, Anthony, look, this was kind of where we ended up. What do you think? Or in fact, he'd send you through to Ibbaka to say, look at it in real time on the platform. But maybe you've got an executive who's actually going to go in as part of the final sales conversation. You'd print this out, you put it into the executive's hands, and you say, this is the story that we're going to tell in this final sales presentation. Mm-hmm. And so we support obviously, and we'll set up for you X number of value stories, and we think that there are different types of value stories. But right at the end of this, we have this summary. So we're basically saying, look, Bob, in the work that you and I have done together, we can confidently demonstrate $700,000 plus of value, and on the pricing information that I've shared with you, that's basically saying that our contract is going to be $156,000 for this year. So that's a 4.6x return for you. And the idea, of course, as you know, is that we want Bob to be going and selling inside his business and to be
Yes.
the hero. So that's the ultimate manifestation is through this thing called a value story. Let me just close and just confirm for you that any changes that we made in the value story approach actually end up, and obviously go back and they update the underlying value model. So these two things are always synchronized for that. So there's an immense amount of flexibility here, but what is there? Ultimately, there is standardization of the way that you present, the way that you do your discovery processes. There's standardization of the actual value calculations themselves. So that's that side. Then when we start to look at customer success, what we will do is that first thing is that your customer success team gets to see the exact same value story that was shown to the prospect at the time of the sell. So there's no potential, there's no possibility of there being any disconnect between what we had promised and now what we need to demonstrate through value realized. Then your customer success team what we'll do is that we will version that instance of the value model and basically say that was the value model at the time of the sell. Then we will create an instance of the value model at some frequency. So maybe the team does a quarterly business review. So we'll create a version of that for the quarterly business review. The customer success person will have the same conversation with the prospect about the same discovery and getting the actual metrics for the various value drivers that we populated. And then we use that to have a value realized conversation. But the same thing, value stories, and we can have a sales value story versus a customer success value story that has different presentation and different slides. Okay. And we've made that more and more now. It's self-service, so you can upload your own slides and integrate them and stuff like that. But that's the essence of it, right? So, and there's a lot more depth beneath it, but those are the two core use cases and how, you know, we've tried to make it very intuitive so that what's Anthony's job? Anthony's job is to build out the value model and the equations and to do all that work and thinking and kind of like higher order type thinking, and then to make it in such a stage or so easy that a seller can then take Anthony's thinking and can then operationalize this with every prospect conversation. A customer success manager can operationalize it with every customer success, you know, conversation QBR. So that's what we have. Maybe, and we can go much deeper into it, but let me just stop there and see if that kind of makes sense, if that was kind of what you were expecting or not expecting.
It was along the lines of what I was expecting.
And sorry, Stephen, I didn't see that you had your hand raised there.
Yeah, Stephen, if you want to jump in there, and then I'll give my thoughts after.
Oh, I just wanted to note, Anthony, for someone in your position, the other part of the reason this is so great is it gathers all the data together for you.
Yeah, that was one of my points. Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, as we know, value models and pricing for that matter need to be adaptive and change. But one of the ways that you change them is by looking at the, you know, at the data and the patterns in the data and finding things that, you know, these value drivers are resonating with this part of the market. These value drivers are not resonating. And, you know, that's a critical insight that's really hard to gather any other way.
Yes, absolutely. No, that was one of my points, is that, or one of my questions, I guess, rather, is that does that data exist on, and can it be broken down by, say, what we're trying to pull is an industry tends to lean towards these specific value drivers. And then we see that once you get into the customer success side of things and they're actually using this over time with a customer, is there data to actually say this is what they've achieved after 1 year? So it's the, you know, the CSM is having those conversations, they put those numbers in, but does that track historically, and we still have those different versions to see what we set at sale, what we set at 6 months, what they actually achieved at 1 year.
Yeah, and that's critical to track that, right?
Yeah.
And see that change over time. So right now, the way that we support that is by giving you the ability to download data.
Okay.
It's very well described, and there's a lot of detail, and then it can be processed through your BI systems. We are layering in additional sort of more value-centric analytical frameworks, and running this back through our AI to improve the quality of the value models and drive new insights. But often people have their own approach to how they want to analyze value data, so we don't want to trap you inside our system. We also give you the ability to download this data or any part of it.
Yeah, in great granularity, Anthony. Sometimes, yeah. So just as Stephen said, is that making the data export as open as possible has typically been our winning strategy wherever we've had to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So what would how would we go next? So number one, this is not one of those things, Anthony, that would be a 6-month implementation project. We really want to and have built something that allows you, like with an engaged partner, is that we want to be able to have at least your first sellers actually using the product within a few weeks of us saying let's go. So it's not one of those things that it's not like working with Simon Kucher or any of those guys, where it's months and months before you see anything, if anything. So it's rapid implementation. We've also really been thinking about where are we in our journey and how do we want to price. So we want to price so that customers just think this is actually a no-brainer for us. So our entry package, which basically says that so it's unlimited users. So we don't think that a software platform, we think user-based pricing is probably not the right approach for the future. So we don't use user-based pricing. So basically it would be, this is our entry package. We call it the Foundation Edition. It would be for any unlimited number of users, salespeople, managers, customer success people, customer success leaders. We would create, and Stephen, keep me honest here, is that how many value models does the Foundation Edition now include?
Yeah, right now it only includes one, but it's a good place to get started, Anthony, to prove that the approach works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could start with all 8 of your value models, but that would require a more expensive subscription, which of course we're happy to do. But you may find it, better to start. Let's focus on one, make sure it works in the context of Docebo, and then we can scale it out to add other subscriptions. So in our proposal, we'll tell you how much it would cost if you had 8 different value models.
Yeah, but I do think that with the flexibility of the value model and not, I mean, obviously this is a transparent conversation. So we might even end up leaving money on the table. You could still take our value model and you could still think about individual use cases. So you could, in one of the drivers, you could say there is an attrition reduction value driver, and we know how to measure the cost. If you can reduce attrition by 10%, we know how to measure that. Then there is an onboarding value driver that actually is a revenue value driver. So you can still implement them, right? So, but it would be one value model, and there would be inherently a little bit less flexibility. But that doesn't mean that you can't put those value equations into that value model.
Yeah, the way I would be thinking about scaling this anyways is not having all 8. We don't barely use some of them. The way I would think about it, at least it would be internal use case and it would be external use case. Right. So those are fairly different on how we approach things during the selling process. Right. But those are really the two. Like anything other than that, I wouldn't think about for a long time.
Okay, so that sounds good. So one value model, but with a lot of flexibility in it, and then 3 value stories that we just showed you. And we think that there's a discovery value story, there is a final communication value story. So 3 value stories, plus our onboarding time, plus obviously our support, and we've priced this to be like, we think very attractive. So our subscription for that is $9,000 US a year.
Wow.
Yeah. For that entry. Now, some of our customers, so you might say, well, where do you make money? And so as customers want more value stories or more value models, we have different subscriptions for that. And just so you're not locking yourself into something, you don't feel like you're locking yourself into something where we will nickel and dime you. Our most expensive subscription for a large company that wants to have N number of value models and N number of value stories is $49,000 a year. So we're not talking, it's not like there's $1 million a year coming.
Right.
And then the other part that we that people do rely upon us for, and if they wish to, is that we've got very deep consulting expertise. So there will be some companies that we work with who will say, look, you've done a good job on the value model, now come and work with us on our pricing strategy and our price book. We're launching a whole bunch of AI functionality. We've got no idea how we should be pricing them. Yeah, and so that's the other part of it. And we're not proposing that we need to do any of that right now. We're saying, let's just take what you have and your expertise and what you're building. Let's just digitize that. Let's put in your current price book and let's get going and show value. And then if we establish a trusted partner relationship and we do a good job, then our theory is that you'll come to us asking for our assistance with other areas. And that's the way we approach business.
Got you. Yep, that's very transparent, and I appreciate that. I guess next steps from my side, I'm gonna have to talk to Scott about this. So I'm gonna get him to watch this recording. I report directly to Scott, and then Scott reports to our chief revenue officer.
Okay.
And so we'll have a conversation. I'm running our value engineering practice. He's my boss, so I have to get in line with him.
Of course.
So if you could send over this recording, and maybe like a quick email summary, and then I can forward that on to Scott to take a look at. My only question, I didn't slip it in there. I know you said the value story is customizable to our colors and things like that. What is the actual level of customizability of those slides? Like how things are positioned, like the shapes of things, all of that sort of stuff.
So that's it's getting better pretty much daily right now. That's one of our main focuses. If it doesn't do today what you need it to do, we will support you for no extra charge to make sure that it does. But
basically what we do, sorry to interrupt, Stephen, Anthony, is that you basically take your current PowerPoint presentation and you upload it, so it will match and mirror exactly what your standard PowerPoint presentation is. And if for any reason something does not render to your perfection, as Stephen said, that's work that we will do, and that's development work on our nickel, not on your nickel. There is no additional cost on top of what we've provided in terms of subscription.
Got you. Okay, that's clear.
Okay, and so what I'll do is that I will, unless you want me to or want us to, shall we just go ahead and send an email with the proposal information, just so that you have it?
Sure. Yeah, yep. That would be helpful.
Okay, I'll do that. And just look at, it'll be another Quilla presentation, and I will also include, I'll embed into that Quilla presentation the recording of this meeting as well.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, very good.
Okay, thank you both so much for your time. Great to meet you, Stephen.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Yeah, good to see you again, Anthony. Thank you for your time, and I apologize for running over here a little bit.
Oh no, that's okay. Only a few minutes over. All good. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.